As you may or may not know, my first video game console was the SEGA Mega Drive, and it was this console that made me fall in love with video gaming as a whole. From the age of 4 years old, it's all I've ever focused on as a hobby, and almost 30 years later, nothing has changed. I own a lot of consoles from multiple generations. I own a PAL Sega Mega Drive Model 1, a PAL Mega Drive modded with a region switch, a Japanese Mega Drive Model 1, a Japanese Mega Drive Model 2, a Super Famicom, PS1, American Nintendo 64, Sega Dreamcast, PS2, Xbox, GameCube, Xbox 360, PS3, Nintendo Wii, 3DS, 3DS XL, PSP, Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation Classic, Sega Mega Drive Classic, NES Classic, SNES Classic, PC Engine Core Graphics Mini, Commodore 64 Classic, and a PC. I love it so much, and I'm enjoying trying to build up a collection of games for each platform. Gaming means a lot to me, and I'm lucky to have a fiancé that appreciates that about me and accepts that this is a passionate pastime for me. After all, she's pretty much a geek herself, so she understands where I'm coming from. She was brought up on her Super Nintendo, which she still has to this day, as well as a PS3 and now a PS4. Her favourite game is The Last of Us, and she mostly enjoys playing Call of Duty and Rocket League. She's more of a casual gamer compared to me, but she has an appreciation for retro systems despite that. She grew up in a family where her brother had a number of different consoles at the time, including a Sega Master System, which she got to play every now and then. But now she hasn't played it in such a long time, and she's always wanted to relive that memory and get a Master System of her own. And that's pretty much what I did for her this past Christmas, when I decided to order a Master System Model 2. For years she expressed interest in a very specific model. Not just the Model 2, but one that was packaged with a built-in copy of Sonic the Hedgehog. And at first I thought, built-in? Consoles never did that. Not even the NES did that. The Mega Drive never even did that. Turns out, she was right. You could get a Master System Model 2 with a game built inside it, and you could play it so long as you didn't put a cartridge inside it. But before we get into that, if this is your first time here, welcome to GB Reviews episode 21. And on today's episode, I am going to be taking a look at the Master System Model 2 and the games that this particular console came bundled with. So without further ado, welcome to GB Gaming, where video games come first. The Sega Master System. This was a console I was not familiar with at all. Much like the NES, this was a generation I barely missed out on. As I said, I was introduced to gaming when the Mega Drive was in its prime, so I never knew anyone who owned a Master System. My knowledge of it was, and still is, extremely small, and as such, I never experienced it. Sure, I got to play a few Master System ROMs via emulators as I entered my late teens, but since I never owned or played on a real console itself, it did not feel any different to any other ROM I was playing from other consoles. The Master System was known as the Mark III in Japan because it was the third iteration of the SG-1000. The original SG-1000 was released in 1983 and the Mark III was created in 1985. It wouldn't be until 1986 where it would make its way overseas and be rebranded as the Sega Master System, first releasing in North America and then re-released in Japan in 1987 before finally releasing in the EU shortly after. A few years later, after the release of the Mega Drive, Sega unveiled the Master System 2 and released the new model exclusively outside of Japan. This was the model that my fiancé grew up with. So when I was told that the console could come packaged with a game built in, I was scratching my head in disbelief. Well, it did, and the two games it could come packed with was either Alex Kidd in Miracle World, and the other was the aforementioned Sonic the Hedgehog, which became available after 1991 when Sonic the Hedgehog released worldwide. The built-in game feature was exclusive to the Master System 2. The original console did not come with any games built in. So I scoured online for the system she wanted and I found one, not only with Sonic built in, but also with a handful of physical games, complete in their boxes. So the console came about 2 weeks after ordering it, and when it got here, she was excited, she was delighted, I was excited, I was delighted. We took it out of the box, we got all the controllers and the cables, and we had a look, and then... oh... it's an RF output. Fuck. Yeah, I forgot to mention. The Master System 2 was designed to be a cheaper iteration to that of the original model. A few hardware changes were made and features were removed. The original console, the Model 1, had a card slot for games that were released on a SEGA card. It also had an expansion port which allowed the attachment of an FM sound unit, which was only available in Japan. It also allowed you to plug in 3D glasses which were powered using the card slot. The Master System 2, as I said, was a cheaper alternative, and as such came with less features, including the removal of the card slot as well as the expansion port. It also had a different video output as well, opting to almost exclusively use an RF output instead of the much more favoured RCA slot that would allow for RGB output including SCART. As a result, the quality of video games themselves were awful to look at. Aside from that though, it is a nifty looking console. A bit on the bulky side, especially when you compare it to the much sleeker SEGA Mega Drive. But overall, not a bad looking system. I don't like the cartridge slot door though. It's really awkward to open. Since this was made after the Mega Drive, it surprised me why they didn't opt for a more subtle flap door, and instead they gave us this stubborn thing. The controller is also quite interesting. This particular controller is known as the Model 3 controller and would be packaged with the Master System 2 by default. The original controller had a slot in the centre that allowed you to insert an optional thumbstick, with the model after it only changing the position of where the cable came from. At least that's from what I noticed. It's a similar layout to that of the NES controller, that being a rectangular shape, a D-pad and 2 buttons. But there were a couple of differences from the NES controller that I noticed, one of them being an omnidirectional D-pad and the complete absence of a start button. The only way you can pause a game on this console is the pause button built in to the console itself. Which means in order to pause the game, you cannot just press start and leave. No, you have to get up, go over to the console, press the pause button, and then it's paused. That has to be the most inconvenient thing I have ever seen on a retro game console, even one as far back as that. Because the NES, at least, had a pause button. You could just press start and leave. So what if you're on a particularly difficult game, for example, a very intense, difficult game, and pausing the game would immediately pause it, obviously, so pause, done. What if you need to answer the door, or you need a piss, and you're playing a very difficult game on the Master System, and you have to pause it? This is what you have to do. You have to get up, press the pause button. That could take 2 seconds. That's 2 seconds that is left for the game to do whatever it wants before you pause it. That's 2 seconds of concentration completely lost. I can't even believe I'm making an argument for this, as it's so standard. In fact, it was even standard back then. Aside from that though, it does kinda look nice. I do like the black finish on it, and the buttons feel nice to press, and the D-pad... Well, it would be nice if it didn't sound like it needed oil. But anyway, I have a handful of games to play here, and not including the built-in copy of Sonic, I also have Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic Chaos, Wonder Boy, and Olympic Gold. So I'm going to go through these games and see what they're like. Luckily for me, I do have something that will allow me to play these games in a better visual fidelity than what this provides. Now, I know it seems a little bit contradictory due to the fact that I am here to review the Master System and a couple of games for it. But in order for me to get the best quality possible and the best experience possible, I'm going to have to upgrade just a bit in order to play these games in the way that I would like to play them. Because otherwise, this is what it's going to look like if I end up playing these games with this garbage cable. Take a look. What the hell? Look at the absolute fucking state of that! Look at the fucking nick of these colours! This is terrible! This looks absolutely terrible, and this is why RF is one of the worst video outputs ever to grace video game consoles. I even tried tweaking it. I tried tweaking the cable to no cigar. Nothing was working. I thought I got it working. I tried fiddling around with the cable and the colours came up, but it was blurry as hell, and then I just fucking gave up in the end. Well, we cannot have that, can we? Behold, the Mega SG. Created by Analogue, a clone console that replicates original hardware from that of a real Sega Mega Drive, allowing you to play your Mega Drive games via HDMI. The Mega SG uses what is known as an FPGA chip. This is what allows the console to play exactly like the authentic hardware. It allows up to 1080p resolution, contains digital audio, original controller ports, a plethora of internal options that you can mess around with within the system itself, even allowing for filters and scan lines, as well as tweaking the audio quality to make it sound as authentic as possible right down to the specific console model. If you prefer the sound quality that was achieved with the original Mega Drive Model 1, you can tweak it to sound like that. Likewise with the Sega Mega Drive Model 2. It also came included with an unreleased game, Ultra Core, formerly known as Hardcore. It was originally created in 1994 and was unreleased until the release of this particular console, and it comes embedded within the console itself. And that's not all. On top of being able to play all of your old physical Mega Drive games, it also comes bundled with a cartridge expansion port which allows you to insert Master System games. And since I'm going to be playing these games using this, of course I'm going to want to use this controller I bought too. This is the M30 wireless Genesis controller created by 8BitDo, and this will allow me to play Master System games with a start button at least. So here we go. The first game I'm going to be taking a look at is Olympic Gold. Now, when it comes to sports games, Olympic sports is not one I'm particularly interested in nor good at. They say FIFA and Madden are the same game every year. Well, the same can be said for Olympic video games. No matter how nice they make the games look, or how atmospheric they appear to be, when it all comes down to it, the only thing you'll be doing for the most part is this. But is it any good? Well, aside from the obvious ones, running, hurdles, and to an extent swimming, the only ones I seem to have the worst luck on are the diving board and javelin. Does that make it bad? No, I'm just fucking atrocious. Well, the game has a number of different menus for how you want to play, but at the end of it all, there's no point unless you're going to do the main Olympic mode. But I decided to try the practice mode anyway. And all I did was the running, not much practice there, but just mashing buttons until I overtake the opponents. I tried the Mini Olympics mode, and it comprises of allowing you to choose what events you want to do, and which ones you want to leave out. I decided to chance my arm at the diving, and it just wasn't happening for me. I had no idea what to do. D. Anderson, that's me. I tried looking in the instruction manual as well to see what I had to do. Do you remember instruction manuals? They were awesome. I followed the instructions as best as I could, and I just couldn't do it right. I eventually tried the main Olympic mode, where you have to take part in every single event. Oh look, I can actually change my name. I thought it was all automatic. So I came to the conclusion that I'm okay at the running sections, not too bad at the hurdles either, if I can time it right, which I didn't do very well during the previous mode. I thought I was good at the swimming, but my character just kept getting slower and slower. I didn't know what to do. I sucked at javelin and I sucked at the diving board, despite the fact I was able to grasp how to actually dive properly eventually. But it still wasn't enough. Archery was quite easy. I just fucked up at one point where I was taking too long to move on to the next arrow, and overall I just suck at Olympic gold. I was never a massive fan of Olympic games in the first place, and this is no exception. The only Olympic game that I did enjoy to an extent was International Track and Field on the PlayStation 1. Remember this?
Honor and glory are yours for the taking.
The timeline.
Well, I don't remember much, if I'm honest. I just recall having a lot of fun with it at the time, but I do remember being really annoyed that the British athlete always looked the most stupid. At the end of the day, it feels like if you've played one Olympic video game, you've played them all. And I don't mean that as a knock, I just don't know what else you could improve. With football games, there is a degree of improvement that can go into the opposing AI, for example, and how you work around them. But with these kind of games, how do you make them more fun if all you do is mash buttons repeatedly as fast as possible until you get blisters? My knowledge is minimal at best, so I won't go into too much detail with it, but all I'll say is Olympic Gold for the Master System is a serviceable sports game that isn't too bad, but Track and Field, it trumps it.
The distance was 9.27 meters.
On to the next game in the bundle. Ah, Jesus. Well, when it comes to the Wonder Boy franchise, I am at an impasse. The first game I ever played from the series was Monster Lair on the Mega Drive, and it isn't even a true installment. It's just an arcade style game that mostly focuses on side-scrolling shooting, a genre that I am not hugely a fan of to begin with. I never liked it growing up, so I ignored the entire series as a whole. I eventually got to play Wonder Boy in Monster World, but I got bored after a while. So this is Wonder Boy for the Master System, the first game in the series. First released as an arcade game in 1986 before being ported to console a year later. You want my honest opinion? Honestly, not that bad. In fact, I quite enjoyed it despite the fact I kept dying about 100 times. Unfortunately, I kind of lack the reflexes for this kind of game. It's rather fast paced and you cannot run back the way. The controls eventually started to feel very familiar because button 1 allows you to jump while button 2 allows you to fire a weapon should you have one. But button 2 also allows you to sprint if you hold down the button. So it's kind of similar to Super Mario on the NES, which did the same thing. So what is Wonder Boy? Well, it's a side-scrolling platformer where you literally run from left to right, collecting pieces of fruit, shooting and avoiding enemies, and collecting eggs on your way. The eggs will contain a power-up depending on what you currently have in your possession. If you're empty-handed, the first thing you'll pick up is a hatchet which you can throw at enemies. If you already have a hatchet, you'll pick up a skateboard which will increase your speed but can also be very awkward to control if you're going too fast. Finally, at least I think it's finally, as I never got an egg beyond this point, is you'll pick up a little fairy that will make you invincible for a short period of time. At the end of each level, you'll come to a boss, and the aim is to essentially knock their head off, and that's it. Simple, fun platformer, nothing elaborate or special, but damn is it hard. A lot of trial and error with this one, but at least you have, I think, infinite continues. Next game. Well, we've made it to the remaining 3 games in this bundle, and all of them are Sonic titles. I'll start with the built-in copy of Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm actually surprised. This is a decent port. Don't let the fact that it was released after the original Mega Drive version fool you into thinking that this was a lazy port just to appease Master System owners. This is actually pretty fun. It was first released on the Sega Game Gear actually, before they brought it up to the Master System. As a result of its release in October 1991, it became the console's swan song title in North America, being the final Master System game officially released in that region. And to be honest, it kind of shows. The visuals are pretty good for an 8-bit title, and the music is a top-notch iteration of the original soundtrack. So my impressions of this one at first were that it felt really floaty. The camera also appears to be way too close to Sonic for my liking. I don't know what it is, but there were times where I just kept making leaps of faith and falling to my death, when in the original Mega Drive version I would already know what I was doing. You could put that down to being far too used to the Mega Drive installment and habits kicking in, which can also be accompanied by the fact that unlike the Mega Drive versions, and quite contrary to the characters in question, Sonic the Hedgehog on the Master System does not focus on speed. I mean, yeah, there are times where he does gain some sort of momentum, but it's few and far between, and doesn't last very long. The fastest I ever managed to see Sonic go in this game was in the first level, and just... whoa. Yeah, that can happen. I went so fast that I practically teleported to the end of the level. And that's what I'm talking about. Whatever it actually means, there is no blast processing in these versions, and this is a good example. Sonic on the Master System is more focused towards careful platforming than trying to speedrun from level to level. As a result, I had to retrain my playstyle. I eventually got used to it until I got to the 3rd level, then I just got stupid and tried to rush through it. Sadly, this is as far as I could go, and I tried to play this as authentically as possible, no save states or anything. Even a converted ROM file on the EverDrive X7 couldn't save me if I tried, as you cannot use save states for the Master System games on this. That feature was implemented on the EverDrive Pro, so I may consider an upgrade if I plan on playing anything Master System related in future. I digress. Overall, this was a pleasant surprise for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. It's a vastly different experience on the Master System, and that's a good thing. I even managed to go through a couple of special stages, and the Chaos Emeralds are out in the open in this installment. This was a fun game. Can I say the same thing for the sequel? Let's find out. The first Sonic game appeared to be an altered version of the Mega Drive game, with a few differences here and there, but still sticking to the fact that this is indeed a port of the first game, with some of the same levels being included as well as the same music. With Sonic 2 though, it seems to take an identity of its own. First of all, almost none, if any, of the levels in the 16-bit version make their return here, though the second level, Sky High Zone, does look quite similar to Hilltop Zone from the Mega Drive installment. Tails is in this game, but instead of being an on-screen companion like before, he's kidnapped, and it's your job as Sonic to go and rescue him. I think one reason why this game appears to be entirely different from the 16-bit version is that this was actually released before the Mega Drive version. It was released in Europe on October 16th, 1992, with the Mega Drive version releasing in November the same year, so you could say that both games were being co-developed. I actually played this iteration of Sonic 2 before, when I had it on Game Gear as a child, and here's what I remember from it. I remember never making it through the first level. I remember thinking the controls felt really floaty and unresponsive at times. Maybe it was because I was spoiled by the Mega Drive version being vastly superior, but I just recall not liking this version at all, so I wasn't feeling confident going into the Master System version. So how does it hold up for me in comparison to the Game Gear port? Well, if the Game Gear version is supposed to be the most difficult version, then I don't think I'll ever want to go back to that version ever again, because this Master System port is not easy. Although, ironically, I did manage to get my way through the first level quite easily despite a few hiccups with the boss, but the second level can seriously go and do one. This is where the hang glider is introduced, and it just showed up out of nowhere. At first I thought it was automatically in my possession once I left the cliff, but I was going so fast I didn't even notice that it was actually sitting there on that cliff, obtainable. By the time I noticed I was flying the thing, I panicked and ultimately fell off of it. This was the point of the game, as early as it is, where I just lost all manner of momentum, if I ever had any to begin with. I understand it takes a lot of patience and practice, but it's very difficult when the hang glider is the most awkward mechanic in this game. My first instinct is to hold the forward button, but that doesn't work. You have to tap the opposite direction once you speed up, and that will allow you to go higher, ever so slightly. There was a point where the wind started taking me upwards, and it was at that point I just completely fucked up. I had no idea what to do. The hang glider killed it for me, unfortunately. But I don't want to say that it's a bad game overall. There were a few things I noticed about this one that I found interesting. There are no special stages. I do believe if the end level sign stops at Tails, you get an extra life, but there is no massive ring or lamppost to jump into or anything like that. There are no special stages whatsoever in this game, as far as I can see. This is the first classic Sonic game that I can think of that allows you to control different vehicles. The first level is a good example of this, as it allows you to ride a minecart a couple of times, and as per the front cover, you can indeed fly the aforementioned hang glider. Another thing I found intriguing is, likewise with Sonic 1 on the Master System, you have to beat each boss without carrying any rings. This could be why I found the Game Gear version of Sonic 2 to be incredibly difficult. In fact, the level 1 boss on the Master System seemed much more feasible than what I remember. Let me go check. Oh, that's why. Now I remember. Look at the absolute state of this. That ball has a mind of its own. No wonder I couldn't play the Game Gear version to save myself. This is so frustrating. That being said, overall, Sonic 2 on Master System was more frustrating than fun, but that's easily down to me not being good at it. But if I'm honest, both this and the first game stand well on their own as solid Master System exclusive Sonic titles. And onwards to the final game in this bundle. Of all the retro Sonic games I've played in my life, this is one I completely missed. Sonic Chaos was a sequel in and of itself, taking place immediately after the events of the 8-bit Sonic 2, and having almost nothing to do with the main games on the Mega Drive. This wasn't a port of Sonic 3, nor did it have anything to do with that side of the game. This was its own game, exclusive to 8-bit systems. Well, how did it fare compared to Sonic 1 and 2? Well, the menu sounds the same as Sonic 2. I guess they really are showing that this is directly following that game. Oh, look at that, now you can select either Sonic or Tails. I think for the sake of consistency, I'll just keep playing as Sonic. So let's see how Sonic Chaos is. If Sonic 2 is an improvement of Sonic 1, which it kind of is despite the difficulty, surely Sonic Chaos, now being its own game, exclusive to the 8-bit platforms and showing no signs of similarities to the Mega Drive incarnations, this could be the ultimate 8-bit Sonic game. Oh my god, this is atrocious. How can much less be going on within the compounds of this screen, yet still slow down to this much of a crawl? How does that even happen? Oh, sweet mother of shite. What happened? They were doing so well with Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. What mistake did they make here? The slowdown is horrible. The heads-up display hides behind the foreground. Sonic doesn't even pick up rings despite clearly flying into them. But do you know what makes this game even more crazy? This is actually the easiest of the 3 8-bit Sonic games. At least it was for me. I was able to breeze through to the 4th level until I got to the 2nd act and just gave up. I could have kept going if I really tried. I finished a level in about 19 seconds, for God's sake. 19 seconds! I know Green Hill Zone Act 1 like the back of my hand, and the fastest I've only ever managed to beat it is 28 seconds. That's from playing it about 50 times over the course of almost 30 years. I played this level for the first time in my life and bang, I'm at the end already. What are the bosses like at least? Well, here's the Act 3 boss on level 1. Seems straightforward, just use the spin dash against him from behind. Oh yeah, that's right, this is the first Master System Sonic game that allows you to use the Super Spin Dash. Okay, he's gone off to the edge of the screen. I assume this will be like Sonic 2's level 1 boss where he'll just come back in the opposite direction and... well, where is he? Where did he go? Oh great, I found a glitch. I don't think I've ever ran into a game-breaking glitch on a 2D Sonic game before. Not once in my life. This is a first. Oh Jesus Christ, this is horrendous. What a disaster. Well, let's try and avoid talking about more of the atrocious gameplay we're looking at here. And let's try and find out what other differences there are compared to Sonic 1 and 2. Maybe there's something positive in here, I don't know, let's try and dig something out. For one, you can now collect rings during final acts of each level, which makes bosses much more doable than before. There is this new thing where your speed is marked as you pass a stage. I had no idea what it meant, but according to the Sonic Wiki page, it says, when passing them, the player's speed, which is seemingly based on the act's completion time, is tallied in kilometers per hour. The highest possible speed is 999 km per hour. Having 3 of the same numbers in the measurement, for example 555 km per hour, grants an extra life. So basically, if you know you're coming to the final stretch of a level, just spin dash your way through it and hope for the best. Seems a bit odd if you ask me, but whatever. There are only 6 zones in Sonic Chaos, which is kinda surprising to me considering how simple it is to beat a level in comparison to the previous titles. Sonic 1 and 2 did have 6 and 7 zones respectively as well, but they were much more challenging than this, so it would make sense. I'm surprised this game didn't have 8 zones. I was able to get to Mecha Green Hill Zone, which is the aforementioned 4th zone, before I bottled it. And it only took me roughly 13 minutes to get there. Play your cards right and you could have this game beaten in about half an hour, or less. On top of the Super Spin Dash, you can also do another type of dash by holding up and pressing a button, and it will cause Sonic to rev up with his feet instead. This is known as the Strike Dash, or Super Peel Out, as it's known in other games. In Sonic Chaos, I've no idea what it does that's different from a Super Spin Dash, other than it leaves you more vulnerable to hurting yourself from enemies. So why was it included? I'll never know. Apparently it's just to allow for a bigger increase in speed from a stationary point, but that's all well and good, but what use does it have in a slideshow like this? Aside from all of that, Sonic Chaos does little to nothing special. Nothing to separate it from other games other than it's quite possibly the worst 8-bit Sonic title I've ever had the displeasure of playing. Yes, even worse than Sonic Blast. The only excuse I'll give Blast is that it's a Game Gear exclusive. This is a game released on console. The end of a console's lifespan, no less. Slowdown is expected, especially on 8-bit platforms, but when it goes slow for almost no reason at all, it's a no-brainer. It's the worst. Out of all the games I've played in this bundle, I have to say the best one I played was the built-in title. Sonic the Hedgehog was a deserving pack-in for this system. Sonic 2 was good, but the spike in difficulty made it hard for me to enjoy it more than Sonic 1. That's not to say it's bad, it's far from it. I will never judge a game based on its difficulty unless it is grossly unfair. Sonic Chaos is a good example of a game that is simple to play but horrible to look at. Wonder Boy was okay. It wasn't horrendous, but because I'm not really a fan of the series as a whole, I couldn't get into the trial and error side of it all. It requires too many reflexes for me personally. Olympic Gold is just an average Olympic video game that you'll either love or hate, from what I've seen. In conclusion, these are not the definitive games you would want to buy for the Master System if you ever decide to get one. Well, apart from Sonic 1 and 2 of course. According to Retro Gamer magazine, the 10 best games to play on the system are Psycho Fox, Operation Wolf, Alex Kidd in Miracle World, California Games, R-Type, Baku Baku Animal, Wonder Boy 3 A Dragon's Trap, Prince of Persia, Phantasy Star and Sonic the Hedgehog, with Sonic being their number 1. Obviously everyone's list is going to be different. I'm personally not a fan of Alex Kidd, so I would not have that in my list whatsoever, especially if my opinion of Alex Kidd on the Mega Drive is anything to go by.
Nobody fucking likes these levels, so why are they included? I'll tell you why. To piss the player off when they have the slightest bit of momentum going, which by the time you pick this game up, you probably won't even know where the momentum starts and ends, because there isn't any momentum. It's an unfair, clunky mess.
That game put me off that series almost entirely. Wonder Boy 3 The Dragon's Trap is the true third installment of the Wonder Boy series. The other one being Wonder Boy 3 Monster Lair, which I mentioned earlier in the video, and is regarded as the best in the series by most people. Most of the other games I've mentioned can be played on newer consoles, so it's up to you what you decide is the best way to play them. If you're as impatient as me and actually enjoy the inclusion of save states and whatnot, obviously you're going to go with a more convenient method of playing them. But if you're a pure retro enthusiast, chances are you may already have a Master System if you're that much into it. I'm a huge fan of retro systems overall, and I do play them from time to time, but I cannot get back into the habit of playing them fully authentically. I've been spoiled by save states, so I always try and find a way to play them that way if possible, but that's just me. And that was my review of the SEGA Master System Model 2 and a couple of games that I got to try out for it. and overall, it's not a bad console, but obviously it hasn't aged very well, and the games on it are not that great. Some of them are okay, but I would actually prefer the NES much better than the Master System. And if I'm going to play any Sega console, I'm going to play the Mega Drive because that's my retro game console of choice. But in terms of 8-bit consoles, the NES beats out the Master System. I'm sorry, but it does. And I'm not a Nintendo fan. Well, I'm not a major Nintendo fan. But if I was to pick between the Master System and the Nintendo Entertainment System, Nintendo beats it. It's hands down, it does. The Model 2 at the very least is not the console you should go with if you're ever going to pick up a Master System. You are better off buying the Master System Model 1. Not only because it has more features attached to it, but it has a better video output if you're going to plug it into a CRT. One major reason to get an NES over a Master System, if you're going to go for either of the two, is the controller. This doesn't cut it for me, personally. If you want to splash out extra money for a better controller, you can use a Sega Genesis / Mega Drive controller if that's your thing. Or you can splash out on the Mega SG controller that I showed you earlier on in the review. But the best way to play any retro game like these is either on a clone console or one of the classic consoles that you can get nowadays in the form of the PlayStation Mini, the Sega Mega Drive Mini, so on and so forth. There isn't a Master System Mini yet, but there might be in future. But as far as the Mega Drive Mini is concerned, it might not happen because the Mega Drive Mini wasn't that good. But if it's any consolation, if you have a Mega Drive console and you want to play Master System games on it, just get an adapter and it will allow you to do that. But I think I've spoken quite enough about this console. So if you made it this far, thanks very much for taking your time to watch this. I don't normally go on camera, but for the sake of this review, there was a lot of visual that needed to be shown in the video itself, because it wasn't just games I was showing, it was the console itself, and because I have one, I thought it's best I use the camera for this, and I quite enjoyed it. But if you made it this far anyway and you enjoyed it, you know what to do. Hit the bell, subscribe, like the video, share it. It doesn't bother me, you don't have to do any of that. I'm just happy to make these videos purely out of my own enjoyment because it's a great hobby of mine that I really enjoy doing, and it's only gravy if you enjoy it as well. And if you did enjoy it, like I said, you know what to do. Otherwise, I'm glad you made it this far at the very least. So once again, thank you for taking the time to watch this episode of GB Reviews. I've been Dave talking to you on GB Gaming, where video games come first. Thanks once again, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Oh, and check out my podcast as well, it's on Spotify. You can go to GB Gaming on Spotify and it should pop up there. Otherwise, all my podcast episodes are on YouTube. That's about it. Thanks again. Catch you after.